Here you go. Perfect. We are recording. So thank you so much for joining us today, James.
Great to be here, Josh.
Fantastic. So you're just back from Zanzibar, right?
Yep, just back from Zanzibar. I did 4 days, little breakaway from business, which is somewhat of a rarity for me, but definitely well due at this point in the year. Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it wasn't like you were going from holidays escaping the UK weather. You were actually escaping Dubai heat, which is a luxury most of us wish we had.
Yeah, but you would be surprised when it gets to July and we're hitting 45-degree heat. It's honestly the best time to be escaping the country. So yeah, just like you guys will want to get to sunnier climates in the middle of the summer. Me too. I like to get to like slightly cooler places at this point of the year.
Absolutely. And so I always think about this because 45-degree heat seems ridiculous. Like, as soon as you go outside, are you dripping of sweat straight away?
A lot of the time, yes. The humidity at certain points can get pretty crazy high. I mean, sometimes 70, 80% humidity, I think. The 45-degree heat in itself is okay, but you couple that with the humidity is when it gets unbearable. And that certainly peaks around like July and August, which isn't so fun. But the thing with this country is that it's so well set up that, unlike perhaps being in Glasgow or Edinburgh or even maybe in Cape Town where Craig's at, it's so well sort of set up. I mean, you just go from one air-conditioned environment to another and you actually don't feel it too much. So it's not as bad as it may sound.
Absolutely. Well, look, we get straight into your SEO career, James. Do you want to give us a brief overview about what you've done and where you are right now?
Sure, yeah. I stumbled into SEO like many people do. I started my, I guess, career playing rugby kind of semi-professionally up until the age of around 19 or 20. Unfortunately, didn't make it to the professional realms. Ended up going into art and design and finding my way into a photography company, being a photographer's assistant, which was my first exposure into business and marketing in general. So whilst I got hired as a photographer's assistant, they sort of channeled me into the sales, marketing, acquisition side of things, and eventually worked my way up to being general manager. Stayed with that business for about 10 years, helped it grow from what was a husband and wife startup to about 50 people. And then eventually left that business in around 2010, which is when I got into marketing consultancy. And my path into marketing consultancy was through an introduction. I ended up going to an event that was held here in Dubai where there was a bunch of guys who were all making millions from their laptops sitting on a beach. And I thought that's the sort of thing that I would like to do, and stepped away from that company and started to do affiliate marketing. So I was selling all sorts of stuff, everything from protein powders to software online. Realized that there wasn't really a significant income to be made in that, and ended up having a chat with my mentor who suggested that I go into selling services to local businesses. And what I started to do then was resell his services, which were mainly web development and SEO, to companies in the local area, and started to build up a pretty significant business over the course of the next 6 months or so. And then eventually really kind of nurtured and niched down into doing SEO stuff, which was the part that I really enjoyed. And that resulted in me launching SEOSherpa, which is my agency, in 2012, and have been running that now for the last 11 or so years. So that's where we kind of find ourselves up until this point.
Amazing. And me and Craig were literally talking about, I love the name SEOSherpa. I think it's a really cool name. Too. But yeah, so you've had SEOSherpa for well over a decade now. I'm sure you've gone through loads of trends in the market, up and down. Like, what's the hardest thing that you've done business-wise for SEOSherpa?
Hardest thing I've done business-wise, I think honestly, it's just the day-to-day grind. It's maintaining that same level of quality of output and leveling things up for a prolonged period of time. You guys are in the space. You see how quickly agencies can launch and then basically fall out of the market. I mean, yeah, exactly. In and out. It's very difficult. I mean, an agency business is one of the hardest to run. There's the complexity of an ever-changing market, such as new policies, algorithm changes, new platforms coming out. You constantly need to adapt, and then couple that with the fact that you have to service clients, which is always difficult. Is actually one of the most difficult businesses to run. So I think honestly, like just still being around 10 plus years later and with a pretty sizable and significant business, I would say that's probably the toughest thing overall.
Awesome. How did you manage the storms? Like when something happens, okay, so let's just take ChatGPT 3.5. Do you find, I guess, do you get distracted by that? Do you look into it? How much research and development time goes to that? Do you allow the team to get distracted by it? Or have you been through this enough now to know that focus?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have a director level team in place that really is looking after, the evolution of the ecosystem in which we operate. So we're always trying to have, one eye on the future whilst really being focused immediately on the present. We try not to get too distracted because, like anything, those trends can blow up and then die away really, really fast. So we like to often be the second mover in a market. So just, watch it from a little bit of a distance, see how that thing evolves, take lessons away from whoever is moving quickly into that new channel or platform, and then decide how we want to enter it thereafter. By that stage, we've probably got a good idea how we want to approach things and probably the personnel that we'll need in place in order to execute, if that is a different set of personnel to the ones that we have on the team right now.
And talking about that, what size is the team, James?
Yeah, we've just crossed over 50 at this stage, which is a combination of co-located in-office, which is around, I think, 20 or 21, something like that. And then we have the remaining roles distributed, and they're across maybe 10 plus countries at this stage.
Awesome. And over those 50 staff, and I'm sure you've had loads over the past decade, what's kind of been the key qualities of like your top performing SEOs?
Extremely inquisitive, people that like to test and validate and never take assumption as fact, and certainly not take what Google says to be fact. That's certainly one quality that we like to look for. Really just a strong, solid work ethic, particularly because our work is all focused on client servicing. We have to be held to a high level of standard. We are accountable to the retainers that we sell into clients, and we need to make sure that the work that we promise is delivered. And we look for a really fantastic cultural fit. We've got a team here that is exceptionally like-minded in what they see as important and valuable to them, but we've got a real diversity of backgrounds, which really allows for a great sort of discussion, and sometimes, a challenge between certain people that really helps us innovate and move forward. So those would be some of the main things. And we typically hire mostly more kind of senior roles. So we're definitely looking for people that have got a track record and have been there and done it in the past, which we might see from, case studies or, sample work that they produce for us and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned
staff.
Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just going to say, so it's 50 seniors as well, because I was going to ask you what the ratio would be. Would you have a few beginners, a few low-level execs, a few seniors, a few managers, or are you saying that everyone you have is you're trying to get an A player with loads of experience under the belt?
Certainly A player attributes, but not necessarily in terms of track record and experience. Our setup here is based around a squad architecture. So essentially what that looks like within the agency is 5 mini agencies within the global agency. And within those core teams, they're focused mostly on the key execution of client accounts. So within that team, we'll have an account manager, we'll have a technical SEO specialist, an SEO specialist, which is really a general SEO looking after all on-site factors. We'll have a copywriter, and then we'll have a developer for implementation. So they work independently as units. Now, within those roles, we tend to have more senior level staff because they're also the people that are always going to be client facing. Supporting those functions, though, we have other divisions like our link building and outreach division. We've got a content production division. We've got UX and CRO that work across clients. Now, those are less client facing, and sometimes we'll be hiring in more junior people to those types of roles, particularly if it was something like a content writer or an outreach manager. Those types of skills, can easily be trained. We just really want the right sort of credentials and assets and people that, work hard and, and want to grow. So bit of a mix, but in the front facing ones, it's generally more senior that we look for.
That's cool. And if you were to do it all again, I'm just curious, like, what would the first 5 key hires you would make? Would you build this squad structure again and then just keep adding on top of that, or would you do it differently? Because this seems great for a big agency.
It is, yeah. And we didn't start like that. So up until about 35 people, we had complete shared resources. So one specialist could be working across what might have been, 30 accounts, for instance, at that stage. The trouble with that as you grow is there's so much complexity in communication and so many communication lines that things just break down. And it also allows people to hide themselves within the system and not deliver on the level of work that they should be, because no one really notices if they're doing anything. So by kind of splintering off into this squad structure, we build back in a lot of accountability and ownership of work. But yeah, when we began, I actually started really outsourcing all of the work. So I didn't do any of the execution myself, and that was probably up until about 5 or 6 team members. And at that stage, everyone in the business was either focused on client servicing or low-level admin work, and we basically outsourced all of the work to a provider who could execute well. Now, that's great up until a point, but then you want to be able to have more kind of ownership and control over the process. So that's when we started to bring it in-house. Then we, as I said, had shared roles, and that took us to about probably 30 people, at which time things started to break. And then we splintered it up again into what I think now will scale up to be, potentially could be 100, 200 person agency, and those systems would still work because they operate, in isolation away from the rest of the group.
Very cool. Very cool.
Cool. And so, James, obviously you have been around for about 12 years now. I can't remember what the stats is, but it's like, what is it? A startup fails within the first year, it's like 90%. To get to 5 years, it's an extra, it's very, very high. To make it to 12 years is a massive well done. What do you think's kept you guys alive compared to the other agencies that come around for a year and they're gone?
I think certain things have certainly played into an advantage for us. One would certainly be the fact that we've been specialized from day one. And because of that, we've built a reputation as being, a key player within our market, within the search space. I think we were also quite lucky in terms of timing within our own market. So when I started in 2012, there was a handful of SEO agencies within the Dubai market area, but there wasn't really a lot of knowledge about SEO. And we've, I think, risen with the tide. So as more companies have become aware of search, they've started to invest in it more. We've managed to capitalize on a lot of that. But I think really just focusing on the fundamentals, because we've only really got one thing to worry about, which is being really good at SEO. We've been able to, develop well and improve our offering and just stay at the forefront. Whereas if I think we were trying to do 4 or 5 different things, everything from, web development to social, it gets so much more difficult because of the level of complexity that's involved. So just staying simple has worked really well for us.
And what's the SEO industry like in Dubai at the minute?
It's definitely developing. There is some stronger players that are coming into the market. And I think there's also a leveling up of the players that have, been born and bred within this sort of region. There are still, though, quite a few areas where I would say we are somewhat behind. So one example would be we're only just getting around to building a digital PR division right now, and have made a hire within the last month or so for that particular function. And really, we're the first movers to do digital PR within a search agency at this level, at least to my awareness. here in the UAE. So there are some things that you think, okay, they should be moving a little bit faster within this space, but they don't. But it is growing. It's a much smaller market than the UK. It's a much smaller market than the US. So the budgets are significantly smaller typically than those two markets. But there is definitely a big awareness of search and more investment going into it. We've definitely seen that increase over the last kind of 24, 36 months, something like that.
Cool. And these people you're hiring, do you have an internal recruiter to help with that? Or is it something you do personally? Or...
It's a bit of a mix. Depending on the role, we'll either recruit through referral and our own network, or if it is a more difficult to hire role, then we will use recruiters. And most positions that we fill that are locally based, we recruit from international markets because it's very difficult to get like experienced talent within the UAE. I think we've probably spoken to every single SEO within this market over the last 10 years or so. So we often go to other major markets like the ones that you guys are in. You know, South Africa's been a good market for us. The UK has definitely been a good market for us. We've hired throughout Europe, Italy, Spain, Germany as well. So it's a little bit of a mix.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's a lag. Sorry, Josh. I was going to say, like, retention. So, like, having a good team, it's obviously helps you get to where you're at today. Something that I've become more and more aware of over the years as well. Keeping a team can be quite hard, especially in this industry when people are trying to poach A players left, right, and centre. Do you think Dubai is a nice USP for you? It's a way of keeping them. I don't know. Dubai's a lovely place. I don't know how to word this better, but do you think Dubai's been a big help in securing top talent?
Definitely in acquiring talent. In the past 2 years, especially, I think Dubai's PR engine has certainly worked in our favor. I don't know that it's an advantage in terms of keeping talent, because if we ever do lose talent that's locally based, they will stay in Dubai. And very often they will be poached by large corporates or government entities who are, you know, financially rewarding them really, really well. In fact, I can think of the last 2 losses that we had that we would have liked to have kept. Those have been the scenarios. We just couldn't compete on finances. But I don't think they would have gone for any other reason. We've built a good reputation here. We've got a fantastic culture. It's fair. I think it'd be very rare that someone would leave us for another search agency, but they certainly might leave us for other types of opportunity once they're based here. Yeah.
What strategies do you have in place to keep the retention high within your team, or what have you found that works best?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing quite a lot. Career progression and development for us has always been the main thing. So ensuring that there's a very specific and deliberate career track developed for each individual so that they can progress their skills and or their seniority within the organization, making sure that they're accountable to that track and giving them the support and training they need to develop. Also, just ensuring that they are paid competitively. That is important. So we do annual reviews on salary levels and we adjust to market rates to ensure that we're always remaining competitive. We also are just trying to do a lot of stuff that just builds a really solid culture. That might be activities, retreats. We just took 45 of the team to the Philippines for 7 days about a month ago now. So those types of perks are also really exciting for people. But honestly, I would say the best perk that keeps people here is the other people. And if we can really control the gates on the way in and on the way out and make sure that we've only got the very best people, it's very difficult for someone to want to leave when they're surrounded by such great teammates. And I think that's been a real USP for us and something that we put a lot of time and effort into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. We have a client where we have to find UK SEOs to move to Australia. And we thought it was going to be quite hard, but what we found out was the visa model. Once you hit over 30, you basically can't apply for like a working holiday visa. I think that's right. So we were actually getting people that thought that the dream of Australia were gone, and then this came up, and like, yeah, it was quite cool as well to get people sent down to Australia. But I get where Craig's coming from. I feel like if we started reaching out, we were like, oh yeah, you ever thought about Dubai? Like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to go on a holiday there. Well, why don't you want to move there and do SEO? As well as that, is it tax free from a employee point of view as well?
Yes, it's tax-free from an employee standpoint, so no income tax at all. Corporation tax is only just being introduced now, and that is only applicable to a small amount of the transactions. So there's definite financial advantages to being in the UAE versus other places, and that might have been one of the reasons why I ended up here in the first place. Aside from the sunshine.
Myself and Craig, we thought about it. We were living in, was it Portugal? We had the conversation, Craig. We were like, well, we go off to Dubai, set the company up there. And yeah, because what is it? You have to be there. Worried.
Yeah, you have to be there for 5 years. Yeah.
Is that right, James? Yeah.
I don't know, honestly. I mean, from a tax perspective within the UK, you can only be in the UK for 6 months maximum, or just shy of 6 months. I think there's a tipping point at 6, but I don't think there's any short-term, sort of requirements for tenure in Dubai, as far as I'm aware.
Not on Dubai's side, but if you go back to the UK will be like, well, we still consider you a resident here, so you've only been away for like a year, you're still liable for that tax, I believe. I don't know. We need to look into it, but I feel like they try and catch you out there. They want their tax money. I don't know. I was a bit worried about Dubai. I feel like Dubai is like the pinnacle of cities, like across the world. And if you go to the peak too soon, like nothing's going to compare. Like, I don't know. We've just completed Manchester. Like Dubai seems. Maybe I'll wait till 30 before I go there.
Yeah, perhaps. I'm certainly getting sort of interested in exploring other places. I mean, we're in the process at the moment of looking at offices elsewhere, and I'm very much looking forward to maybe just 4 to 6 months in Dubai for the year, and then maybe 3 to 6 months elsewhere. I think that sounds like a great balance.
And just while we're on the topic of Dubai, we had a mentor that was trying to get us over to Dubai as well. And his big sell on it was the business opportunities, the network opportunities are unparalleled to elsewhere. What's your experience been with that?
I would definitely vouch for the network opportunities. There's a certain type of person that finds themselves in Dubai, which is very much a forward-thinking, entrepreneurial go-getter type, and being surrounded by those types of people is extremely uplifting. It just gives you the confidence to pursue your own endeavors, and sometimes they're just a good validation that it is all possible. So I think the environment here is fantastic. In terms of the business opportunities, I know it depends. I think it would depend on the market that you're in. I think what's always important to remember is the market is still quite small. If you're targeting this geography, I mean, the UAE, I think now is maybe 8 or 9 million, something like that, which is a quarter, no, 1/6 of the UK, right? Or 1/30th of the US market. So it's comparably small compared to those places, but there is opportunity if you're going after the right sorts of clients and business models.
Absolutely. Well, look, back to SEO. So James, you've been in SEO for 12 years. You've had your agency for 12 years. Is there anything with ChatGPT, AI coming in very, very fast that you guys are preparing for, or you're thinking of taking different directions to? How are you going to weather the storm?
Great question, and probably the wrong person to ask about that one. It's funny. I've been on a couple of podcasts and presentations, and everyone asked me about AI, and I'm like, clearly I'm the wrong person to be speaking about this. It's not really in my consideration set. It certainly is in the teams, and they're really thinking at the moment more about how we leverage the technology to be more efficient in our work. And we're introducing a lot of machine learning tools, of which ChatGPT is one of them, to just streamline our processes and remove some of the human complexity out of the work that we do. But we've not really thought too far beyond that at this stage. I think the thing with AI, at least from my standpoint, is we really don't know where it is going to go, because the opportunity and the direction is infinite. I mean, it really could end up in any place, and only really the AI will be able to determine that. So I think it's just better to go with the flow to a certain extent and see where things head, and just make sure that you keep your eyes on the pulse and follow whatever opportunity and trend presents itself.
Absolutely. Cool. And we've just got back 1 minute to, so you've got a team of 50. Obviously, keeping company culture is really important for retention. What advice would you give on onboarding? Because, so I'll just give an example. We placed a SEO director for quite a high salary. It was 120K salary in the US. And it was a very, very impressive company. Won't name them. But let's just say the onboarding process wasn't the best. And it was a fully remote team. So within, I think it was just under 3 months, the SEO director left, not because of what the company was doing in terms of clients or SEO, but literally just because the onboarding process wasn't there. What kind of things do you do from an onboarding perspective that you could give advice on?
Yeah. So we do a few things dependent on the position. I'll speak from the standpoint perhaps of a local recruit. Some of that then applies also to remote team members as well. So the first thing is just to get them really well integrated before they move over. So we like to have a lot of conversation during that period where they've accepted the offer and they actually move to come to Dubai. And that is just starting to kind of pepper in some of the projects, the accountabilities, the numbers that they will take charge of to get them excited and interested in the work that they're going to undertake. We also make sure that they're really going to be well positioned when they land in the country. So we help with all of the visa processing. We help with their accommodation for the first month. We set them up with a how-to guide on places that they can go and how they can get their alcohol license and all of this sort of stuff that someone moving into this country would need to know. And then make sure that as soon as they land, they're just really well taken care of. So they're picked up from the airport, they're transferred to their hotel, you know, they're made to feel really welcome on their first day. We take them out to lunch, all that sort of stuff, the kind of the fluffy stuff. But then beyond that, we have a fast start program, which is typically a week where we take them through a whole set of checkbox items that they need in order to get up and running as fast as possible. So they go through this whole program where they get themselves signed up to tools, they meet and integrate with all of the team members, they go through foundational training, they get access to SOP. So really by the end of the first week, they're actually ready to get going on some work. I think the sooner that you can get people into projects and working on stuff, that's really, really important. And then ensuring that they have all of the support around them that they'll need. So for us, that typically means a culture buddy who would pally up with them for all aspects of like how the company operates and the cultural ethos and that sort of stuff. And then a role buddy. So someone who's going to teach them the ins and outs of their particular position. And they continue to check in with those two people, at least for the first month. The week that they start is typically daily. After that, it's typically weekly. So they've got someone to really rely on as they kind of encounter the work. Those would probably be the main things. For the remote team members, I mean, aside from the moving stuff, they also have that same kind of fast start program. You also need just to be a little bit more proactive in a remote setup because they're not going to have those conversations naturally where they're bumping into people over the water cooler. So it's really important that those conversations are set up in a structural manner, which typically happen through those daily one-to-ones, which then transfer to weeklies thereafter. I'd say those are probably some of the things that have worked well for us.
Awesome.
How do you measure the success of someone new that's joining? Like, do you have routine, I don't know, not disciplinary meetings, like do you have routine meetings where you check on the progress? How do you KPI them? I'm just curious. Are they more laid back to begin with?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is we hire for those measures of success. So one of our hiring criteria is to set out what would be a successful outcome in this role, typically over a 90 or 120-day period. And then we select candidates amongst other factors based upon those things. As soon as that person comes in, we're like, these are the measures of success you've been hired to achieve. Now go out and get them. And those would typically be measurable numbers. It might be, you know, a number of clients that they must acquire, a retention rate that they must maintain, a commercial value that they must bring in, or whatever it may be for the role. And then we continue to check in with them as part of their one-to-one sessions on like, well, how are you doing against that number? What are you doing between this week and next week to drive that sort of outcome? So everyone's on the same page of what that measure of success looks like. But also, you know, the company and the individual are working together to make sure that we're progressing on those accountabilities. And that typically works well.
Interesting. Have you hit any major kind of roadblocks in the past or any challenges? Like, it sounds like you've got a lot of systems in place now, but I wonder if you've got any horror stories or big moments that you learned from.
Good question.
Putting you on the spot.
I'm trying to think. I mean, there's definitely been challenges. Most challenges typically come around really difficult or obnoxious clients that just don't get the process or are just extremely unreasonable. Those have been the most difficult situations, I would say. And SEO is quite complex anyway, let's face it. It's a very difficult thing for someone who's outside of the industry to understand at times. And I think this market also in particular is more premature than perhaps the European or the US market. So client understanding is often a difficult one. But other than that, there's nothing particular that springs to mind at this stage.
Fair. I just hired a new COO. I felt really bad about the onboarding process we gave her because I had some personal things going on. And she went, "Oh, don't worry, this has been amazing. You should have heard some of the horrors, like some of the onboarding that she's had to do in the past. And in times when she's just onboarded herself, if not, has been worse."
Yeah.
So, I think I don't know why. I think some companies just struggle with it because they're so focused on delivering.
Sorry, just displaced my microphone.
Don't worry.
Let's get that hooked up. Otherwise, bear with me 1 second.
No problem.
I pulled this out after probably a year sitting in the cupboard today just for this. Let's hope it wires back up. Okay, cool. We should be back in business. There you go.
Sure.
Sorry, Craig, you were saying.
I was just saying. I think companies just get so lost in trying to move forward and deal with client work and stuff. They don't take a second to slow down and get the right people onboarded. Brings me up to something that I'm dealing with right now. So, how do you deal with when is the right time to hire? When do you know that you have to hire new people? Because you don't want to have too many staff not working directly on paying clients. But you also need to give them time to get on board. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, there's typically two scenarios that would trigger a hire for us. One would be that there's a problem that we're trying to solve, which could be, the adoption of a new service for which we don't have talent internally. We need to go outside of the team to, find those people. The other one would be a utilization challenge. So, we've got a pipeline of clients coming on board and the team is reaching a certain level of utilization, which means if we onboard too many more clients too quickly, then they're going to be overstretched and unable to deliver. So we really track closely the hours utilized by the team versus the hours that we sell. And then when we reach a 70% threshold, we would trigger hiring. Hopefully at that stage, we would have a pipeline of hires also from previous rounds of recruitment that we've done. If not, then we're going to go out to the market and build those teams. So we really keep a close eye on that. It is very difficult for an agency to manage the marketing and the capacity seesaw, as I call it. Like you always upping the marketing and then, oh shit, now we need to up the capacity in order to handle it, which in a software business or a media business, you don't have. You can just acquire, and it doesn't make any difference. But when you've got a service business, actually balancing those two things is really important. So we time track down to the minute to make sure that we're on top of how much work is the team doing and on what is that work being done, client work, internal work, etc., etc.
What happens if you're not at capacity, but the perfect hire approaches you tomorrow and says that you're looking for hires? Would you just say no, or would you consider it? What's the right call for an agency?
I think there's definitely some considerations to make depending on what that hire would bring. So for us, if it was a hire that would be revenue driving, so whilst we might have a short-term outlay in terms of salaries, but we thought, right, by bringing this person on, we could, add on new clients. in a particular service area, then that would typically be a no-brainer for us. Like, we wouldn't let that person go by. If it was just an exceptional person who maybe isn't going to add too much to the business and therefore is going to affect profitability, we may hold back and decline. It really does depend, but we're always trying to maintain a healthy level of profit so that we've got good margins and never squeeze ourselves too tight, because also the same thing can happen. You can acquire customers, but also you can lose customers. So you never want to be in a position where you're reducing your profit margin lower than, let's say, 20%, because that could mean if you lost one or two big clients, you could then fall out of profitability, and then you have to make adjustments. Yeah, exactly. So you need to be mindful of the numbers.
Yeah. Okay, so this perfect hire comes tomorrow. How are you vetting them? Let's just say it's an SEO manager. What red flags are you looking for, and what green flags are you looking for in an SEO manager?
Yeah, I could probably speak to this one by explaining our process. So we have quite a long hiring process. I think there's maybe 6 stages. So people really have to jump over a few hurdles to get onboarded at SEOSherpa. So the first thing that we look for is just like experience fit. So have they done what we need them to do, which is typically assessed over initial kind of screening call, 25, 30 minutes. Tell us what you're good at. Tell us what you're bad at. What's your career history? Where do you want to go in your career? Those types of questions. The second stage for us is then looking for cultural fit. We want to put that assessment right up at the front, because if they're the best SEO in the world, but they're an asshole, then we don't want to spend any time with them. So the cultural fit is the second stage. Now, we do something quite interesting with the cultural fit interview, and that is that we do it over Slack, which is a chat-based interview. The reason we do that is so much of our communication is done in text-based format, and we want to see how people communicate in that type of communication style. The first stage, with it being a call, also we don't have any video, because we're trying to also remove visual biases from the process as well, so that we're not swayed by where someone's from or what they look like or anything like that. After the cultural fit assessment, then we're getting them always to do some form of practical activity. So that would be maybe an SEO case study, get them to solve a complex SEO problem, like get them to prove that they can do what they do. And then after that, we've got 2 video interview rounds. One is a long form video interview where we talk about career history. And then the second round is then what we call a focused interview, where we just ask about specific accountabilities of the role. And then we're saying, look, you're going to be charged in this role of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tell us about your biggest successes in each one of those, and tell us about your mistakes and lessons learned. And that really weeds out people to honestly like the best of the best candidates that the perfect fit. And then final stage for us is then doing reference calls with at least 3 to 5 former managers throughout their career. So it's almost impossible for someone to get all the way through that process without being significantly good and having the patience and determination that they actually want to get the role as well. So it serves 2 purposes.
What's the time frame there from start to finish normally?
Typically about 4 weeks.
Fair. Quite a lot going on. Yeah. 5 references is a lot too.
Yeah, sometimes we do 3, but we try and look to 5. And we also do very often what we call side door references as well, which is speaking to people that are not mentioned on their references, which could be mutual connections on LinkedIn, people that we know that have worked at the same agency as them, and so on and so forth. You guys would be testament to this. The expense of the wrong hire is just huge to a business, not just in terms of like hiring costs and onboarding, but like the loss of opportunity. It honestly is probably my number 1 function in the business is finding and recruiting the best talent. It's really that important to us.
Well, I know a lot of the SEOs I deal with day to day would look at a 6-stage interview process and be like, nah, I'm not even applying for that. But I think with all the benefits of you guys offer, like the moving to Dubai, like it's a massive risk for you guys as well. It's not just a wrong hire. Yeah. It's going through sponsorships, finding somebody in an apartment. It's like so much more than just finding somebody.
Yeah.
But I love that. I think it's a really cool process. Do you guys use like disc assessments or anything?
We haven't done up until this point. We typically get people to do a Myers-Briggs when they first come on board to understand, what their kind of traits are like and how they better interact with other members of the team. But no, we haven't utilized DISC. Have thought about it, but isn't something that we've implemented just yet.
And how long does it take for, okay, so let's say somebody goes through all those 6 stages of interview. They're doing the training, they've done the onboarding. How long does it take for somebody to get like up to scratch and ready to go?
Depends on the role a little bit. I mean, if it's a core kind of SEO role, let's say an SEO specialist, a technical SEO, then if we have recruited well, they should honestly be up to speed and working on client work within, a couple of weeks. It's going to take them a bit longer to really get into like our ways of working and processes, but they should be functional and contributing within a couple of weeks. Roles that are a little bit more client facing, particularly SEO account managers who are leading the client account, that one takes a lot more adjustment just because of cultural sensitivities of working in this region, understanding how people operate here. That does take people a little bit longer to really get into the groove, often 6 months or so. But again, they should be, contributing and functioning within the first sort of month or so, really.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be a very, very hard heartbreak if somebody went through all those stages and then dropped out a few months in.
Yeah, it does happen.
But yeah, James, so I've heard of SEOSherpa plenty of times over the last 2 years especially, but recently I've seen quite a few of your posts on LinkedIn. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody building a personal brand?
Good question. I would say it's certainly a huge advantage to build one, for sure. I know a lot of the key hires that we've made recently have been invested in that, whether that be a strong social presence, whether they are speaking at conferences. It definitely credentializes a candidate and is going to get them noticed. I think it is something that people should really be focused on. And it's also just an advantage to the business that's hiring them, because if you've got a presence in the market and you're utilizing that also to feature the company that you work for, then that has significant revenue advantages. I don't know. I mean, I'm not super invested in personal brand. I know I should do more of it. I try to post consistently on LinkedIn. I try to be consistent across other channels, except occasional interviews when I'm asked to do them. I think consistency is certainly important. I would say defining your niche as well is extremely important. Like, be consistent in the type of content and the theme of what you're talking about, whether that's SEO, general marketing, inbound marketing, whatever your thing may be, and try and provide value to your audience. Don't try and sell or promote yourself. Just give as much as you can, and then I'm sure you'll have opportunity coming directly to you.
Absolutely. We just hosted our first event about a month ago, SEO exclusive. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring in a few talks that weren't just all about SEO. So we had somebody come in about personal branding and building an online presence. And it's so funny because I've been saying it to quite a few of my friends that are in SEO, especially in Manchester, are absolute geniuses, but they just like keep it to themselves and do their work.
Yeah.
And I've been saying it for ages, and it's so cool to see recently. You see them posting like 3 times a week of their affiliate site tanked, and this is what they learned from it and stuff like that. And it's getting like loads of likes and people are commenting on it. And that's one thing as well that a lot of our clients will. But the way I say it is, I feel like LinkedIn is the new CV. I know I get kicked for that quite a lot of times, but a lot of our clients, the first thing they want to see is a LinkedIn and see, are they commenting on debates or something that's in the industry? Are they giving their opinion? Are they putting out side projects and stuff like that? So it's something that we've been trying to push a lot to our candidates.
Yeah, you can tell a lot about the way someone interacts in those environments, the information that they're sharing, how they're, commenting and reacting to other posts from other people within their space. Honestly, it tells you a lot more than a resume can tell you, just by following along those sorts of things. I think it's great advice. And to your point, I mean, the best SEOs I know are completely unknown. They're not Rand Fishkin, they're not Neil Patel, as good as those people might be. They're people that are working in the trenches that are doing great work, and they should just shout about it a little bit more, get themselves known.
Yeah, just document it. I think everyone can document it. It's quite therapeutic as well. I found to just write posts. I'm enjoying it. I've just started. Josh bet me that I won't be able to do 90 days in a row. 10 days in.
How you? 10 days in?
Craig's very good at picking up something, going all at it, and then just disappears. So I want him to do the 90 days. So I'm just biting at him just to see how far he'll go.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be watching along. I'll be following your post, Craig, and I'll be making you accountable each day. I'm there for you.
Awesome. But Craig, have you got any more questions for James?
No. I think I'd love to come to Dubai. So yeah, let's get coffee if we come.
Yeah, for sure.
But look,
choose
James,
the right time of year to come. I know, Josh, you're thinking about it quite soon. You've probably not selected the best time of the year, but it's better than not coming at all. So
the only reason is I'm going to Thailand and I'm coming back. So I was like, do you know what? I've got quite a few friends in Dubai. I might just stop in for a few days, meet some people, and then head back. But everybody I've said that to is like, do you know that like everybody leaves Dubai in the summer, so nobody's going to be there? And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So fair enough. But yeah, James, if I go over, I'll 100% drop you a message. I'd love to come in and have a chat with you. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really, really enjoyed this.
Thank you, James.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Perfect. And James, just before you go, where can people find you? So obviously SEO Sherpa.
Yeah, SEOSherpa.com is the agency website, and LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me if you search for James Reynolds plus SEO Sherpa, perhaps. I'm sure I'll pop up there in the search results.
Awesome. We'll put all the links below so anybody can find you. Thank you so much, James.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, James. Bye-bye.